Hi, I'm Ernie Zor, and I'll be narrating this Puritas Spring software demonstration video of Hamilton County Probate Forms version 3. Now, if you don't practice in Hamilton County, you'll find that this video will show you some tips that help even if you have one of our other probate applications. There's one for Basic Ohio Probate Forms and one for Cuyahoga County Probate Forms. Both of those videos guide you through a simple probate, and if you'd like to see the basic steps, check those videos out. This video will present a brief overview of the data entry process, but I'm going to spend just as much or more time going over a few tricks I learned over the years using the probate program and some handy features that you may not be familiar with. Now, if I was going to single out one thing that is the first and best guide for completing a probate, it's the tree view. The tree view is what you see most of the time, and it's designed to take you through the steps involved in completing the forms. In a word, completing the worksheets. There are 5 of them. The general information worksheet, you see it here. It has, 50 or so fields for the entry of common information that finds its way onto all the probate forms practically, like the decedent's name or the case number. So you enter that type of information here in the general information worksheet. You enter it one time, and it automatically transfers to all the appropriate locations on all the forms. Next is the kin worksheet. I'll bring it up here by clicking on the kin worksheet button. And unlike the general information worksheet, the kin worksheet kind of looks like an Excel spreadsheet. There's one column or field that contains information about the kin or the beneficiary or the creditor, as the case may be. And there's one row for each person or entity. What do you put in the kin worksheet? My test is if a person or entity is going to get a notice, consent, or a waiver, that person or entity is going to go in the kin worksheet. Like the general information worksheet, you put the information in once, and then you just send it to the various forms by checking the checkbox. Now, the general information worksheet doesn't have checkboxes for sending that information, but the next of kin worksheet does, because you may not want to use all the forms. But anyway, it's that easy. Watch this. I've put myself in the bottom row here, and I'm going to send myself to 6 different forms. I'm going to send myself to the front and back sides of Form 1.0, to the notice or consent on Form 2, the same thing on Form 4, and same thing on Form 6, maybe the waiver 6.2, and right there I've completed 6 forms. How long did that take? A few seconds. All those forms are completed. I'll just close that worksheet right now because I'm not going to go on to all the various things, but what I am going to do is move along to the asset worksheet. And I'm going to show you the asset worksheet by clicking on the asset worksheet button. It works like the kin worksheet. Enter your asset details on top, in the fields on top, and send it to whichever form you want. The difference is, you might be saying, hey, where's the checkboxes? Well, the difference is that there are so many places that you can send assets and or their values that there's a separate dialog with all the destination forms, and I'm going to show it to you right now by clicking on the set button here. Send to, you see all those different places that you can send the particular asset to. Now, the asset worksheet includes various types of entries, and it's not just for assets. You enter your other income, you enter your other receipts, anything that's coming in. The basic rule is that if it's coming into the estate, it goes here on the asset worksheet. Now, one thing to mention is that certain forms require items to be categorized. The inventory form is an example that requires you to separate assets into one of 3 categories depending on whether the asset is tangible, intangible, or real. So you've got to let the program know what type of property it is. It's not enough just to send it to Form 6, for example. You must categorize the property that are going to those forms that require categorizing. And the category set button is right here. There's the list of forms. Not that many. I don't even think there's a dozen there, but if you pull down 6, you'll see I'm on the real estate one up on top there. You just pull down the list, and there's the list of appropriate. So you never have to memorize categories or anything. You just pull it down from the list and pick out the right one. I am going to close this worksheet now and go on to the expense worksheet by clicking on the expense worksheet button, and you'll see that this is very much like the asset worksheet. More like the asset worksheet than it was like the kin worksheet. You enter your expense details on top and send it to one of the destination forms you see there in the Send To group of checkboxes. Like the asset worksheet, the expense worksheet handles different types of entries. It's not just for expenses. You'll also enter debts and disbursements and anything else you can think of. Because the rule here is that if it's going out of the estate, it goes here. I'm not going to spend hardly any time on the time worksheet. It's the last of the worksheets. I'll display it here. Let me close expense, open up time. I have one item in there. Basically, it's for keeping track of your time and services. Whatever your total fee is, it'll add everything up. It'll put it in chronological order, and it'll transfer the total automatically to the application for attorney fees. Okay, let me close that up. And then finally, the last step, like I've been going down the steps, you notice, with general information, kin worksheet, asset worksheet, expense worksheet, time worksheet. Okay, the last step, which we might say is step 6 here, even though it isn't the last step in the tree view, that's for going to an individual form and to fill in any remaining fields. You can display any form via step 6 in the tree view. In many instances, there won't be a thing to enter because Hamilton 3 completes the entire form from the entries that you put in the worksheets. I'll show you a couple so you can see what they look like. Let's go to Form 1.0, the front side, and pretty much completely filled out. Yeah, there's some check boxes here that we got to look over and check them if they need to be checked. But that's the only thing that's required on that form. I think there's some check boxes on page 2, but you see page 2 has also been filled out already. And yeah, there's a check box. The will contains no charitable trusts. And we could put a date in there. I won't do it, but we could. Form 2, let's take a look at Form 2.0. That's one you're going to use on every one. It's the application to probate the will. Nothing to complete. It's completed in its entirety. Form 2.1, the waiver of notice, completely filled out in its entirety. There's nothing to do except to print it out. I think 6.1, there's just so many forms that are completed. 6.1 is the actual schedule of assets, and okay, yeah, that's completely filled out. And we're going to come back to that later, I think, because I have some interesting things. Let's go back to the general information worksheet for now. And anyway, that's the overview. Now, I promised you some cool tips, so that's what I want to get onto now. This first one's not so much a hint, but it's an excellent demonstration of how easy it is to make a change. Let's say you've completed the account. It's ready to sign and file. You know what happens next. The executor comes into the office and brings in a bank statement that changes the balance of one of the accounts. Now, you're not blaming the executor, but he or she probably doesn't realize that that change will change the subtotal of personal property not sold, which will, in turn, change the total of assets of all categories, which will change the balance of assets remaining in the hands of the fiduciary. So there's a domino effect there, and how long will it take to make those changes? A couple seconds. Let's go to the asset worksheet, find that bank account. It's this one right here, and it was $301. Okay, I'm done. All of those forms, all of those subtotals that I mentioned, everything is already completed. All that remains is for me to click on the print button and select those forms and print them out in one batch. Very neat. And let's get on to something else. I kind of didn't give you a very good look at that schedule of assets, and let's go back to it right now to Form 6.1. What I'm getting on the subject of is better looking printouts. Now, this is a nice printout. It's neat, it's tidy, there's headings, there's subtotals, everything is very nice with it, but I think it could be much better by doing what do they call it, typographers, I think, if you add some white space, and that's how, so take a look at this, you see how it looks. Maybe I could even print it out very quickly. We've got a lot of stuff going on there, and that's what it looks like. I'm going to hide some of the markings, but you can see how tight it is. And what I want to do is to go to the asset worksheet and grab those assets. Okay. Some of these lengthy entries are tough to get to the bottom of. Okay, all I'm doing is backspacing out one of the carriage returns. You can see how easy I'm going through all the entries in whoops, in just a few seconds here. Here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get rid of that view grid. I'll show you how to do that later. There, now you see everything is kind of separated out, a little easier to read. I think the auditor is going to just really like that. If you prefer a cleaner look, that's the way I like to do things. And it's all done in the asset worksheet very easily by going to the end of the entry and hitting a carriage return so that the cursor is blinking on that line there. Okay. Another thing that happens every once in a while is you might get a kind of like an overflow error, and there are continuation pages for almost every form in the probate program, and that means that if you have an inventory or an accounting that's more than 1 page long, which they probably all are, Hamilton 3 will add as many continuation pages as you need, and this is also true for most waivers, consents, and notices. In the rare instance that you do run out of room, here's a trick that you can use to make things fit. Form 5.10, Application for Summary Relief from Administration, is a good example. On page 2, it asks you to describe all other assets, and it gives you only 2 lines to do it in. Let's get off this worksheet here, and let's go to that. Let's go to 5.10. I think we're going to focus in here on this. Oh no, we're going to go to page 2. We're talking about these lines here where it asks for all the accounts and then it only gives you 2 lines to put all that information in. A few words and a carriage return is going to overflow this easily in one fell swoop. But here's how you can make it fit. You take the individual descriptions of various accounts, and with the amounts in parentheses for the individual ones, just separate them with semicolons. Here, I'm going to show you. I did one at the bottom of it. You might have seen it. I haven't been using it yet, but I'm going to go to the asset worksheet. Oh, I know where. Here it is, 5.10 example. I've got several. I've got a description number 1, description number 2, description number 3. I've got 3 different things in there, and then I took the totals, 2,500, 2,500, and the 1,000, put them over here. And when I send it to 5.10 and categorize it as other, what we should see, and you can copy and paste anything. For example, let's say we were going to add a new entry down at the bottom, and let's say that we had, and I get this question, let's say we had a legal description for real estate, and it was in our word processor. I just happen to have one. I made one up for, I put it in Notepad, Latin filler. Let's just select the whole thing, copy it. Any place you can copy and paste in Windows, you can copy and paste in the program. There it is. There's the entire legal description. But the program actually goes one step further. I want to see if I can get rid of that there. The program goes one step further. Let's say I was going to copy something that was a similar entry. I can copy the entire row if I want, and it'll take all the information. I just go to copy. These are the row commands here. I go to copy, and now I can go to this empty one that I put at the end and say I can paste and replace that one, or I can paste and insert the entry in front of it. I want to paste and replace. Boom, there it is. Now I can change this and make this the different address with the same, you know, I can do whatever I want, but it's nice. And what I find it's useful for too is that, like, let's say this 5.10, that was an illustration for all that wasn't really meant to fit in with all the other ones, and let's say I wanted to put it at the bottom. I could cut it out, go to the bottom, and paste it there. And now it's at the bottom with that other entry. So you can do a lot with those. It's a powerful thing, and it's a big time saver. Let's go on. Now, your usual goal when you're using the probate application is to prepare the standard probate form, so you may not have wandered around very much. Enclosure letters is one thing that you may not have seen. On the display menu, or wait a minute, even down here, there's a whole series of enclosure letters that you can use for filing accounts with the court, or sending an account and waiver to a beneficiary so they can sign and return to you. Letters to the appraiser, letters to insurance companies, inventory and waiver enclosure letters so you can send the inventory out to get it signed and the waiver signed. All kinds of enclosure letters, and you want to check that out and see what's available. If you have a lot of letters, duplicate letters to send to different beneficiaries, this is the way to do it, because you've already got the name and address. I mean, you could do the same thing in your word processor for sure, but you've already got the name and addresses typed in here. So it's not like changing a form letter over and over in the address section. This just rattles them all off. And there's also a miscellaneous section where this you may have gone across this because you probably needed the confidential personal identifier form, consent to attorney fees, affidavit of domicile if you've got stocks that you need to transfer, motor vehicle applications for transfer of title, that kind of stuff. And I'm just going to cover a couple more things. The options menu. There are some things here like insert today, which is Control T, T for today. Let's go back to Form 1.0 and I'll show you something. At the bottom of page 2, there are a set of, there's a date field. Now, if I was going to send this out, or I was going to have everybody come in the office, or they have the applicant or the fiduciary come in and sign today, I just go Control T. There's the address. There's the date. So just hitting Control T inserts the date anywhere. Today's date. Let's move on. Blank fields. Keep in mind that a field. These are fields like the date is a field. Sometimes they can contain anything. So sometimes you might see your printed form and a particular field isn't long enough. Now, many of the individual forms will expand to accommodate a reasonable amount of text, and some of them will shrink the text to fit, but there are times when you might want to leave a field blank, and you want to make sure that the blank is long enough to accommodate whatever eventually might be written or typed on the printed form, possibly by the clerk of courts. It's like on a judgment entry. There are two ways to handle this situation. One is to go to the particular form and enter underscore periods in the field. I'll do that right now. Let's say, now this one already has, I don't know if I'll be able to find a form right away. There we go. Let's just say that you didn't know when the court was going to set it. They're going to fill that out, and you wanted a nice long blank in there. Well, the program will put a blank in there, but it might be too short. So the way I could make it longer is just to put underlines in there. And now when I print the form, those underlines will be there. You can do the same thing for the time. Whoops, went too far. And then when you print the form, the underscores will appear there. Anyway, that's how it works, and that's how you'll get those in there. And that's one way. I told you there's two ways. The first is to put a bunch of underscores in there, and I kind of overdid it there and blew the form apart. But the other way to do it is to go into the default file and do it in the default file. Now there's a separate, let's say that you're always doing this entry, and you don't want to be putting the lines in every time you do a different probate file. So that's what the default file is for. You go to File, No, you don't. You go to File, Open. You want to save your changes. I'm going to open the default file. And I'm going to go to that form, which I don't even remember what it was. And what I'll do is I'll put those, I'm not even going to go there because I don't remember what form I was on. I would go to that form and I would enter in the underscore. I think it was this one. Yeah. I would enter in it the underscores in the default file, and then I would save the default file and get the heck out of there by clicking on New. And then what would happen is that every new probate that I start, I'd never have to go to Form 6.2 and put the underline ins that I want. They're already there. By the way, I think I mentioned it already, but I'll mention it again. There's a separate 5-minute YouTube video dealing with the default file, so if you haven't seen it, you should take a look at it. You may find it can save you a little or even a lot of time. Printing trick. Yeah, okay, there's a printing trick. Before I go here, whatever's on the screen, if you hit the print button, you'll see it and it'll be previewed for printing. But let's say that you've got an inventory and it's 5 pages long. Well, you can, instead of going to the inventory and printing each page one by one, you would either hit Control P, P as in printing, or you would hit File, Menu, and then Print, Selected Forms, and it'll bring up a box. It's pre-checked whatever's looking at, and I'm looking at the General Information Worksheet, so that box is checked. I'll just clear all. And I'm going to go to Form 6, and if I click on the 6.1 Schedule of Assets, if that thing's 10 pages long, I'm going to get all 10 pages. So you want to make sure that you know the right way to print, because one is obviously a pretty good time saver depending on how many pages you've got in your inventory, for example, or how many forms or how many copies of a particular notice that you're sending to 10 next of kin or something. Anyway, I've gone way too long. That's about all I have time for. So I'm going to close with my usual plug for our book, Law Office Computing. What it is a collection of all our best tips and most interesting articles from Law Office Computing magazine and our monthly email newsletter. It's not about Puritas Springs products. It covers all subjects related to using computers in law offices. It could save you money because there's information about free software. There are other utility apps that are free and they're especially useful in law offices. Now you can get the ebook only from Amazon. It's $9 for the ebook version and it's $12 for the paperback version. Hey, the goal of these videos is to make life in the law office a bit easier. It's that simple. I hope we've done that with this video, and I hope that you visit our YouTube channel again. Until you do, I wish you all the best. Take care.